Hello everyone, welcome back to our weekly market analysis video with me, Frankie, your market analyst at Markets4U. In today's video, we'll be looking at the key economic events and data releases from February 23rd to February 27th, 2026. I've already set up my screen to display the economic calendar from the traders room at Markets4U. I've set the dates from February 23rd to February 27th, covering this week's important events in GMT. Please remember to adjust to your respective time zones. Let's dive into this week's events. Monday starts with German IFO business climate, US factory orders, and US Dallas Fed manufacturing index. Tuesday brings US CB consumer confidence and US Richmond Fed manufacturing index. Wednesday features Australian inflation data including both monthly and yearly figures, along with German GfK consumer confidence. Thursday includes US initial jobless claims, Japanese retail sales, and Japanese industrial production data. Friday concludes with a packed day featuring Swiss retail sales and GDP data, German unemployment rate and inflation figures, US PPI data, Canadian GDP figures including both quarterly and monthly readings, and US Chicago PMI. This week's key market-moving events will be Australian inflation data on Wednesday, German inflation figures on Friday, US PPI data on Friday, and Canadian GDP figures also on Friday. These releases should create significant opportunities across major pairs. Now, let's go to the technical analysis. This week, we'll focus on the Australian dollar against the US dollar and the US dollar against the Canadian dollar, as both instruments show interesting technical setups heading into key data releases. Let's start with the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Looking at the daily chart, the Australian dollar is currently trading around 0.7084, showing consolidation after recent gains. The price is consolidating above the 20-day moving average, which continues to provide dynamic support. The stochastic oscillator is trying to cross higher near the oversold area, suggesting potential for renewed upward momentum. Looking at important levels, the Australian dollar against the US dollar has support at 0.7015 and 0.6927, while resistance can be found at 0.7156 and 0.7246. Wednesday's Australian inflation data will be crucial for this pair. The monthly inflation figure is expected to show 0.2%, down from the previous 1%, while the yearly rate is forecast at 3.7%, slightly down from 3.8%. The consolidation above the 20-day moving average is a healthy pullback within the uptrend. The stochastic trying to cross higher from near oversold suggests buyers are ready to step in. If Wednesday's Australian inflation data comes in as expected or shows further cooling, it could support the Reserve Bank of Australia's easing bias and potentially weaken the Australian dollar. However, hotter than expected inflation could provide support for a move toward the 0.7156 resistance level. Now, let's turn to the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. On the daily chart, the dollar-Canadian dollar pair is currently trading around 1.3679, showing strong bearish reversal momentum. The price has been moving higher and was able to break above the 20-day moving average, and is now consolidating slightly above this key level. The stochastic oscillator is consolidating near the overbought area, indicating strong buying pressure but also suggesting the pair may be due for a pause. Looking at key levels, the US dollar against the Canadian dollar has support at 1.3569 and 1.3433, while resistance stands at 1.3803 and 1.3920. Friday's Canadian GDP data will be the most crucial event for this pair. The quarterly GDP is expected to show a contraction of negative 0.1% quarter-over-quarter, down from the previous 0.6% growth, while the monthly GDP for December is forecast at 0.1%. The successful break and hold above the 20-day moving average is a significant development for dollar bulls. The consolidation slightly above this level after the breakout suggests the uptrend may be gaining strength. However, the stochastic near overbought indicates the pair may consolidate before the next move. If Friday's Canadian GDP data disappoints and confirms the expected contraction, it could provide further support for dollar strength and push the pair toward the 1.3803 resistance level. Both instruments could see considerable volatility this week. Traders should be particularly cautious during Wednesday's Australian inflation release and Friday's multiple data releases including German inflation, US PPI, and Canadian GDP, as these events can cause sudden spikes in volatility and potential gap risks. Remember, always manage your risk carefully and never invest more than you can afford to lose. That's it for this week's analysis. See you in the next video.